The invitation that changed everything. Some walls are built with stone, others with silence. Gabriel Thorne had perfected the art of both. From the floor-to-ceiling windows of his Seattle penthouse, the city sprawled beneath him like a constellation of amber and silver, each light a life he would never touch, a story he would never hear. He stood there most mornings, coffee untouched, watching the world wake up while he remained suspended in the quiet space between success and solitude. Gabriel had built Thorne Enterprises from nothing, transforming renewable energy from a dream into an empire. At 38, his name commanded boardrooms and headlines. Forbes called him visionary. Time magazine labeled him reclusive. Neither bothered to ask what he called himself. Lonely would have been too simple. Hollowed out felt more accurate, like a tree that stood tall but had long forgotten what it meant to grow. The divorce had been finalized 2 years ago. Catherine had taken the Malibu house, the art collection, and whatever fragments of warmth he'd once possessed. "You're married to your work," she'd said on their last evening together, her voice tired rather than angry. "And I'm tired of being the mistress." He hadn't argued because she was right. Somewhere between the third acquisition and the fifth international expansion, he'd stopped coming home to a person and started returning to an empty monument of his own ambition. Now, the penthouse echoed with designer furniture and strategic silence. The bonsai tree on his desk had died 3 weeks ago. He kept meaning to replace it, but forgot in the way people forget things that don't scream for attention. His assistant had mentioned it twice. He'd nodded both times and done nothing. That assistant was Natalie Reeves, and she was the only person who'd managed to last longer than 18 months in his orbit. Most quit within a year, suffocated by his exacting standards and the gravitational pull of his isolation. But Natalie had a different quality. She anticipated problems before they materialized, smoothed conflicts before they escalated, and possessed an almost supernatural ability to know when he needed space and when he needed saving from himself. She arrived every morning at 7:15, never early enough to seem eager, never late enough to appear careless. Her efficiency was matched only by her discretion. In 3 years, she'd never gossiped, never overstepped, never treated him with anything other than professional respect, tinged with something he couldn't quite name. Not pity, perhaps understanding. On this particular Wednesday, she entered carrying the usual leather portfolio and something else, a tension in her shoulders he recognized. He'd learned to read the small languages people spoke when words weren't enough. "Good morning, Mr. Thorne," she said, setting down the portfolio. "The quarterly reports are ready for review. The Portland site visit has been confirmed for next Tuesday, and you received another invitation to the Pacific Children's Foundation Gala next month." Gabriel barely glanced up from his tablet. "Decline it. You know I don't do those events." "I do know that," Natalie replied quietly, "which is why I've declined the last 6. But this one is different. Your mother is honorary chair this year. She called yesterday asking if you'd attend." His jaw tightened. Helena Thorne, philanthropist extraordinaire and architect of Seattle's social hierarchy, had spent the better part of 3 decades building a legacy of charitable grace. She'd also spent those decades disappointed that her only son preferred solitude to society pages. "Tell her I'll write a check. I already told her you'd say that." Natalie's voice carried no judgment, only fact. "She said, and I'm quoting, 'Money is easy. Presence is character.'" Gabriel exhaled slowly, recognizing his mother's particular brand of emotional precision. "What does she want from me?" "She wants you to show up. To be seen supporting something that matters. To prove you're still part of the world, not just adjacent to it." The truth of it landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples through the careful calm he'd constructed. He looked at Natalie properly then, really looked. She wore a charcoal blazer over a cream blouse, her auburn hair pulled into a practical knot. No jewelry except small pearl earrings. No makeup beyond what was necessary. Everything about her suggested competence and quiet dignity. The kind of person who moved through the world without demanding attention but somehow earned it anyway. "These events," he said slowly, "require a date. Some polished companion who knows which fork to use and which conversations to avoid." "They do," Natalie agreed. A pause stretched between them, filled with the ambient hum of the city below. Somewhere in that pause, an idea formed. Reckless. Inappropriate. Possibly brilliant. "Would you come with me?" The question emerged before he could reconsider it. Natalie's expression flickered with surprise so brief he almost missed it. Sir? To the gala, Gabriel clarified, feeling suddenly exposed in a way boardroom negotiations never made him feel. Not as my assistant. As my guest. I need someone who understands why these things matter without pretending they're fun. Someone who will actually listen when the foundation directors talk about the children's programs instead of networking for their next investment opportunity. She stood very still, her hands folded in front of her. Mr. Thorne, that's not appropriate. I work for you. People would assume things. Let them assume. His voice was steadier now, conviction building. I'm asking because you're the most genuine person I know. Because you remember the names of the security guards and ask the cleaning staff about their families. Because in 3 years you've never once treated another human being like they were beneath you. He paused. Because I'd rather spend an evening with someone real than someone suitable. The city light caught the side of her face, illuminating the conflict there. You're putting me in an impossible position. I'm offering you a choice, he corrected gently. If you say no, nothing changes. Your job, your respect, everything stays exactly as it is. But if you say yes, you'd be helping me survive an evening. I'm dreading while supporting a cause that deserves better than my checkbook cynicism. Natalie turned toward the window, her reflection ghosting across the glass. Outside, ferries crossed Elliott Bay like patient pilgrims. The Space Needle stood sentinel over a city built by people who dared to reach higher than seemed reasonable. If I agreed, she said carefully, it would be as colleagues. Professional boundaries don't vanish because of formal wear. Understood. And I'd want to know about the Foundation's work. Really know it, not just smile and nod through presentations. I'll have their annual report sent to you by this afternoon. She faced him again, searching his expression for something. Sincerity, perhaps, or evidence that this was another test, another hoop to jump through in the endless performance of executive assistants. Whatever she found seemed to satisfy her. Then yes, Natalie said quietly. I'll go. Relief flooded through Gabriel with unexpected force. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You haven't seen me attempt small talk with venture capitalists, he smiled, a real one. I suspect you'll manage better than I do. After she left, Gabriel remained at the window. The morning light had strengthened, burning away the last wisps of fog from the bay. For the first time in months, maybe years, he felt something other than the steady rhythm of obligation and routine. Something fragile and tentative, hope, he realized. He'd forgotten what that felt like. His phone buzzed with a message from his mother. Looking forward to seeing you there, darling. Try to smile. It won't kill you. Gabriel typed back. I'll bring someone who knows how. He didn't mention who. Let her wonder. Let the whole room wonder. Sometimes the most revolutionary act wasn't building empires or breaking records. Sometimes it was simply choosing honesty over expectation, substance over appearance, and bringing the person who reminded you what it meant to be human into a room full of people who'd forgotten. The bonsai tree on his desk remained dead, but Gabriel made a mental note to replace it. Maybe some things were worth tending after all. The transformation Natalie's apartment in Capitol Hill was a study in careful living. The one-bedroom space smelled of vanilla candles and old books, its walls decorated with framed photographs rather than expensive art. There was her nephew's elementary school graduation, her parents' 40th anniversary, a sunset over Puget Sound she'd captured during a rare day off. Each image told a story about what mattered to her, and none of those stories involved wealth or status. Now, standing in her modest bedroom with the closet doors open, she confronted a different kind of crisis. The text from Gabriel's mother had arrived that morning, forwarded by him with a simple note. Apparently it's black tie optional, which means black tie mandatory. Let me know if you need anything. She stared at the message, then at her closet. 3 work blazers in neutral tones, a collection of practical blouses, 1 cocktail dress from her cousin's wedding that was nice but nowhere near gala appropriate. The gap between her world and his had never felt more tangible. Her phone rang. Her best friend Zara, a wedding planner with an eye for details and zero patience for self-doubt. Tell me you're not spiraling, Zara said without preamble. I'm not spiraling. I'm rationally assessing an irrational situation. Same thing. Listen, you're going to this thing, you're going to look stunning, and you're going to show every uptight socialite in that room what actual grace looks like. Now, do you have a dress? Define dress, Zara groaned. That's what I thought. Emergency bridal showroom tomorrow after work. I know a designer who owes me a favor. We'll find something perfect. The next evening, Natalie found herself in a warehouse-turned-studio in Georgetown, surrounded by fabric samples and half-finished gowns. The designer, an elegant woman named Celine with silver-streaked hair and paint-stained fingers, circled Natalie with the intensity of a sculptor evaluating marble. "Your employer," Celine said. "He's the renewable energy billionaire?" "He is. And you're his assistant?" "I am." "But he asked you as his date to the biggest social event of the season." Celine's eyes gleamed with approval. "Either he's brilliant or you are. Possibly both. Come, I have something." She disappeared into a back room and emerged carrying a garment bag. Inside was a gown the color of deep ocean water, somewhere between navy and midnight. The fabric had a subtle shimmer, not flashy but present like starlight on waves. The cut was elegant but understated, structured enough to command respect, fluid enough to move like poetry. "This was commissioned by a client who changed her mind last minute," Celine explained. "The moment I saw you, I knew. Try it on." In the dressing room, Natalie slipped into the gown with trembling fingers. When she emerged and saw herself in the three-way mirror, something shifted inside her chest. The woman looking back wasn't trying to be someone else. She was herself, only more so. The color brought out the warmth in her skin. The cut emphasized strength rather than fragility. Zara pressed a hand to her mouth. "Oh, honey, you're going to break hearts." "I'm going to survive an evening," Natalie corrected, but her voice wavered. Celine made a few adjustments. Pinning here, smoothing there. "You know what makes this dress special? It's confident without being loud. It doesn't demand attention, it earns it. Exactly like the woman wearing it should." That night, alone in her apartment, Natalie hung the gown on her closet door and sat on the edge of her bed staring at it. The reality of what she'd agreed to was settling in. She would walk into a room full of Seattle's elite, not as staff but as a guest. People would look at her and make assumptions. Some would be cruel, others simply curious. All would wonder what someone like her was doing with someone like Gabriel Thorne. Her phone buzzed. A message from Gabriel. "Wanted to make sure you're okay with all this. If you're having second thoughts, no judgment. The offer comes with an exit clause." She smiled at the screen, appreciating his consideration even as it complicated her feelings. Gabriel was her employer, yes. But he was also a man who remembered her nephew's birthday without being asked. Who'd noticed when her father was ill and had quietly arranged for the best specialists without making it a big deal. Who treated the janitorial staff with the same respect he showed board members. She typed back, "No second thoughts. Just first-time formal gown jitters. I'll try not to trip on the hem." His response came quickly. "If you do, I promise to make it look intentional. See you next Saturday." The following week passed in a blur of normal routine punctuated by surreal moments. Gabriel seemed more present somehow, asking her opinion on things beyond schedules and contracts. They discussed the foundation's work over coffee one morning, and she found herself challenging some of his assumptions about effective charity. Rather than shutting her down, he listened, really listened, taking notes like she was a consultant rather than his assistant. "You're right," he'd said finally. "Throwing money at problems without understanding them is just expensive avoidance." "I didn't say that," Natalie protested. "No, but you thought it. You're too polite to say what you actually mean most of the time. It's simultaneously your best and worst quality." The observation was so accurate and so gently delivered that she'd laugh despite herself. On Friday evening, the day before the gala, Natalie received a delivery at her apartment. A small box, elegantly wrapped with a card in Gabriel's precise handwriting. "Saw this and thought of you. No obligation to wear it, but if you do, know that it's not a gift from an employer. It's a gesture from someone who appreciates what you bring to every room you enter. G." Inside was a delicate silver bracelet, simple and understated, with a single small charm shaped like a compass rose. The symbolism wasn't lost on her. Direction, purpose, finding your way. She fastened it around her wrist and looked at herself in the bathroom mirror. Tomorrow, she would step into Gabriel's world fully, not as an observer or facilitator, but as someone who belonged because she chose to be there. The thought terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. Her mother called that evening, voice warm with maternal intuition. "You sound different, sweetheart. Nervous but excited. Is it that obvious?" only to someone who's known you since birth. You're doing something brave tomorrow, aren't you? Natalie thought about how to answer, about all the small braveries that had led to this moment. I'm going somewhere I don't quite belong and trying to remember that belonging is a choice, not a birthright. Her mother was quiet for a moment. Your father used to say that the people who don't think they belong often belong more than anyone else. They haven't forgotten what it's like to stand outside looking in. After they hung up, Natalie made herself tea and sat by her window, watching Capitol Hill's lights flicker like grounded stars. Tomorrow she would walk into the Four Seasons Olympic Hotel on Gabriel Thorne's arm. She would meet his mother, navigate conversations with people whose net worth exceeded her lifetime earnings, and somehow maintain her sense of self while doing it. But tonight, in the quiet safety of her own space, she allowed herself to feel the full weight of what was coming. The anxiety and anticipation, the fear of judgment and the small dangerous hope that maybe, just maybe, she could show them all that worth wasn't measured in zeros on a bank statement. The compass rose bracelet caught the lamplight, glinting softly. Tomorrow she would find her way, and if she was very lucky, she might help Gabriel Thorne find his too. The evening that revealed everything. The Four Seasons Olympic Hotel stood like a temple to Seattle's Gilded Age, its Renaissance revival architecture a reminder that some things were built to endure. As Gabriel's car pulled up to the entrance, Natalie felt her heartbeat sync with the distant rhythm of the orchestra warming up inside. Gabriel appeared at her door before the valet could reach it, extending his hand. "Ready?" She took it, steadying herself. "As I'll ever be." The moment she stepped out, camera flashes erupted like small supernovas. Gabriel's hand found the small of her back, grounding rather than possessive, guiding her through the gauntlet of photographers with practiced ease. "Mr. Thorne, who's your date tonight?" Someone called out. "Someone far more interesting than me," he replied smoothly, not breaking stride. Inside, the ballroom took her breath away. Crystal chandeliers cascaded light across marble floors. Ice sculptures depicting children at play served as centerpieces. Everywhere she looked, wealth manifested in quiet, devastating ways. The women wore gowns that cost what she made in 6 months. The men's watches could have funded college educations. And then there was her, Natalie Reeves from Capitol Hill, whose father had been a postal worker and whose mother still clipped coupons every Sunday. "Breathe," Gabriel murmured beside her. "You look perfect." Before she could respond, a woman materialized before them. Helena Thorne, in a platinum gown that probably cost more than Natalie's car, regarded her son with the particular expression mothers reserve for beloved disappointments. "Gabriel," she said, kissing his cheek before turning her full attention to Natalie. "And you must be the mysterious guest he refused to tell me about. Natalie Reeves." "Mrs. Thorne, it's an honor to meet you." Helena's eyes, the same shade of gray as her son's, assessed Natalie with surgical precision. Not unkind, but thorough. "Reeves, should I know that name?" "Only if you track efficiency reports at Thorne Enterprises," Gabriel interjected. "Natalie runs my life so I can pretend to run a company." Something flickered in Helena's expression. Understanding, perhaps, or recalibration. "How diplomatic of you, Gabriel. Though I suspect Ms. Reeves can speak for herself." "I can," Natalie said, meeting her gaze steadily. "I've had the privilege of working with your son for 3 years. When he asked me to accompany him tonight, I said yes because the Foundation's work matters. Children shouldn't suffer because adults can't figure out healthcare access." A beat of silence. Then Helena smiled, genuine this time. "Well said. Come, both of you. There are people I'd like you to meet." The evening unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance. Helena introduced them to Foundation board members, pediatric specialists, and donors whose names appeared on hospital wings. Natalie listened more than she spoke, absorbing stories about mobile clinics in rural Washington, mental health programs in underserved communities, research grants for childhood diseases that rarely made headlines. When she did speak, she asked questions that revealed she'd actually read the Foundation's annual report. Not just skimmed it, studied it. She wanted to know about implementation challenges, about how they measured impact beyond dollar amounts, about barriers that money alone couldn't solve. "You've done your homework," noted Dr. Patricia Okoye, the Foundation's medical director, her face brightening with approval. "Most guests tonight can quote our mission statement. You're asking about our methodology. Understanding the work makes the evening more meaningful. Natalie replied simply. Across the room, she caught glimpses of Gabriel watching her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. Pride, perhaps, or something more complicated. They were separated during dinner, seated at different tables by design. Helena had orchestrated it deliberately, Natalie realized, testing how she'd navigate the room without Gabriel as anchor. At her table sat a tech entrepreneur, a federal judge, a gallery owner, and a man who introduced himself as Preston Whitfield, venture capitalist, and apparently Gabriel's former college roommate. "So," Preston said once the salads arrived, his tone friendly but probing, "how does one go from managing calendars to being Gabriel Thorne's date to the event of the season?" The table quieted, everyone suddenly fascinated by their arugula. Natalie set down her fork carefully. "I think you're operating under a misconception. I don't manage calendars. I manage crises, coordinate international logistics, and occasionally prevent your former roommate from working himself into early cardiac arrest. As for tonight, he asked me to come because he values my perspective. That's not a promotion. It's recognition of a partnership that's always existed, just in different contexts." Preston blinked, clearly unprepared for such directness. The judge smiled into her wine glass. "Fair enough," Preston said, raising his glass. "To people who know their worth." The table clinked glasses and the tension dissolved. The gallery owner started asking Natalie about her photography, having noticed the Seattle sunset photo on her phone background when she'd checked a message. The conversation flowed naturally after that, no longer a test but actual human connection. At the main table, Gabriel caught fragments of the exchange. He watched Natalie's animated discussion about light and composition, the way she made the gallery owner laugh, how she commanded respect without demanding it. His mother leaned close. "She's not what I expected," Helena said quietly. "What did you expect? Someone temporary? Someone convenient?" She paused. "Someone who wouldn't look at you the way she does when she thinks no one's watching." Gabriel's chest tightened. "And how is that? Like you're a person, not a portfolio. Like your failures might matter as much as your successes." Helena touched his hand briefly. "Don't lose that, Gabriel. People who see us clearly are rarer than we'd like to admit." When the speeches began, Natalie found herself genuinely moved. A mother talked about her daughter's leukemia treatment, made possible by foundation grants. A teenager spoke about mental health resources that had saved his life. These weren't abstract tax write-offs. They were human beings whose suffering had been eased by people willing to show up with more than money. She felt tears prick her eyes and didn't bother hiding them. Beside her, Preston noticed, "You actually care about this stuff. Doesn't everyone here? Most people care about being seen caring. There's a difference. You're the real thing." Later, as the dancing began, Gabriel found her near the terrace doors, looking out at the city lights. "Hiding?" he asked. "Breathing. It's overwhelming, all of it. You were incredible tonight. I watched you turn skeptics into allies over dinner. My mother said you have more natural diplomacy than most State Department officials. Your mother is terrifying in the best possible way." Gabriel laughed. "She likes you. Trust me, you'd know if she didn't." The orchestra shifted into something slower. Without quite deciding to, they moved onto the dance floor. His hand settled at her waist. Hers found his shoulder. They swayed together, not perfectly in sync, but honest in their movement. "Thank you," he said after a moment, "for saying yes. For being here. For reminding me why any of this matters." Natalie looked up at him. In the chandelier light, his face had lost some of its usual careful control. He looked younger somehow. Less certain but more present. "Thank you for asking me as myself, not as who you thought I should be." Something shifted in the space between them. The distance that professional boundaries maintained began to feel less like protection and more like obstacle. But neither moved closer. Not yet, maybe not ever. Some truths were too complicated to rush. When the song ended, they stayed on the floor for another, and then another. Around them, the gala continued. Conversations and laughter. Connections made and contracts quietly discussed. But in their small orbit, the world narrowed to two people learning to see each other outside the roles they'd carefully maintained. Preston caught Helena's eye across the room. "Your son is in trouble." "The best kind," she replied, smiling. As midnight approached, Gabriel and Natalie slipped out to the terrace. The October air was crisp, clearing away the evening's accumulated warmth. Below them, Seattle stretched out in all directions, A city of possibilities and second chances. I have a confession, Gabriel said. When I asked you to come tonight, it wasn't entirely about the foundation or surviving my mother's social engineering. Natalie's pulse quickened. No, it was about wanting to spend an evening with someone who makes me remember what it feels like to be human. Someone who challenges me to be better not through criticism but through example. He turned to face her fully. It was about you, Natalie. Just you? The confession hung in the cool air between them. She could deflect it, laugh it off, retreat to the safety of professional distance, or she could step forward into the uncertainty of honesty. I'm terrified, she said quietly, of what this could mean, of how quickly everything could change, of losing what we have by reaching for something more. So am I. His voice was rough with emotion. But I'm more terrified of spending another year pretending that you're just my assistant when you've become the person I most want to talk to at the end of every day. She searched his face, finding only sincerity. Where do we go from here? Slowly, he said, carefully, with full acknowledgement that this is complicated and potentially catastrophic. He smiled slightly, but also with the understanding that some risks are worth taking. Natalie nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Instead, she took his hand, lacing their fingers together. A small gesture that meant everything. They stayed like that, watching the city breathe beneath them. Two people who'd spent years carefully maintaining distance finally allowing themselves to stand close enough to feel each other's warmth. Tomorrow would bring complications, questions about propriety and power dynamics, concerns from HR and speculation from colleagues. But tonight, under the vast Seattle sky, they were simply two people who'd found something rare. Not love, not yet, but the possibility of it, the hope that companionship could grow into partnership, that respect could deepen into something more profound. Inside, the gala continued. But the evening's most significant moment was happening out here, in the quiet space between what was and what might be, where a billionaire and his assistant stood together, equals in every way that mattered, choosing bravery over safety, and somewhere in that choice, both of them began to understand what it meant to truly belong. Not to a room or a social circle, but to themselves and each other.